Today's lesson is Chapter 6, Lesson 5 on pages 403 through 408. Our objective is I can multiply decimals by decimals. Vocabulary multiply and decimal. Question 1. When you multiply decimals, you put the numbers as far to the blank as possible. Question 2. When you multiply decimals, don't worry about the blank point until you are finished.
We're asked to multiply 32.12 or 32 and 12 hundredths times 0.5 or just 5/10. Now when you multiply decimals, you multiply them the exact same way you would multiply whole numbers, and then you count the number of spaces behind the decimal you have in your two numbers you're multiplying, and you're going to have that many spaces in your product. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's just multiply these two characters. So we have 32.12 times 0.5. And when you write them out, you can just push both of them all the way to the right. You can almost ignore the decimal. Right now, you should write the decimal where they belong, but you can almost pretend that this is 3,212 times 5, and then we'll worry about the decimals in a second. So let's get started. So if we were just multiplying 5 times 3,212, we would say, well, 5 times 2 is 10. Regroup the 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 2 is 10. Regroup the 1. And then finally you have 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. And then we don't have any other places. This 0 really isn't, if we were just doing this as 0,5, we wouldn't multiply 0 times this whole thing. We'd just get 0 anyway. So just 5 times 3,212 gives us this number. But now we want to care about the decimals. We just have to count the total number of spaces or places we have behind the decimal point in the two numbers we're multiplying. So we have 1, 2, 3 spaces or 3 numbers to the right of the decimals in the two numbers that we're multiplying. So we need that many numbers to the right of the decimal in our answer. So we go 1, 2, 3, put the decimal right over there. So 32.12 times 0.5 is 16.060. And this trailing 0 right here we can ignore because it's really not adding any information there. So we could just write this as 16.06. Now the last thing you want to do is just kind of make sure that this makes sense. You have a number that's almost 32 and we're multiplying it by 0.5. Remember, 0.5 is the same thing as 5 over 10, which is the same thing as 1/2. So we're really multiplying 32.12 times 1/2. We're trying to figure out what 1/2 of 32.12 is. And, well, half of 32 is 16, and then half of 0.12 is 0.06, so this makes complete sense.
All right, let's take a look at this in our book. I'm on page 403. So in this example, it says Nina is buying peanuts in bulk. The peanuts cost 75 cents for each pound. She purchased 2 1/10 pounds of peanuts. How much will Nina pay? So we need to multiply 2 1/10 times 75 hundredths, or 75 cents in this case. And it says to round to the nearest cent. So first we can estimate. So we can round 75 cents up to about $1. So it's about $1 times about 2 pounds. So we have about and this would be dollars, so it'd be about $2. So now we can multiply them as whole numbers. So that's our first step. So you already know how to multiply whole numbers. So we're just going to write it all the way to the right, like the video said. So we're going to write 75 cents times 2 1/10. And I know this looks kind of weird because when we did addition and subtraction, we lined up our decimals, but with multiplication, you don't have to. So first, we're just going to multiply it regular. So ignore the decimals for now. So 5 times 1 is 1, or 5, sorry. 1 times 7 is 7. Now I got to do my next digit, so I drop a 0 just like you're used to. 2 times 5 is 10, so I put my 0 down, carry my 1. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15. And you could do that 2 times 0, but it would just be 0. So it works out to be 15. So then we have to add up, same as we do in regular multiplication. So 5 plus 0 is 5. 7 plus 0 is 7. Nothing plus 5 is 5. And then we have nothing plus 1 is 1. So now here's where we figure out the decimal. So we count the decimal places. So we look at the first number. How many decimal places are there? Well, how many places are to the right of our decimal? There are 2 places. So there's 2 decimal places. And then in 2 and 1/10, there's 1 place to the right of the decimal. So we know that there should be 3 decimal places from the right to place the decimal. So we skip over 3 places. So we start all the way to the right, and 1, 2, 3, and then we stick our decimal right there. And our answer is 1 and 575 thousandths. But since it said to round to the nearest cent, because that doesn't make sense in terms of money, we would round this to $1.58, right? Because it tells me to round up. So $1.58. And a great way to check it is to check with our estimate, because if you messed up your decimal, your estimate will tell you if you were close or not. So $1.58 is close to our estimate of $2, so we know that we put our decimal in the right spot. So Nina will need to pay $1.58. All right, let's look back at these 2 questions. And remember, for question 1, you need to put the numbers as far to the blank as possible. So they said that in the video. And for question 2, it said don't worry about the blank point until you're finished. So fill those out in the form, please.